Welcome to Vibrant Living Conversations. I'm your host, Gemma Putty. I'm so excited to be bringing more conversations from North Idaho and across this region to support us all in glowing from the inside out by connecting more deeply to ourselves, our earth, and our communities. For today's interview, I am talking with Heidi Markland, traditional Chinese medicine practitioner and owner of Ancient Spring Acupuncture here in Coeur d'Alene. I was introduced to Heidi through Lise, the owner of Peony Acupuncture and Apothecary, also here in Coeur d'Alene. And I'm so excited to be able to have this conversation today to learn more about these alternative medicines. So welcome, Heidi. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So let's dive in. Chinese medicine and acupuncture in general are huge. So what is your general elevator pitch? When someone says, Heidi, what do you do? How do you even describe it?
Yeah, that's hard because there's so many facets to it. I guess I would start by telling them that it's such an ancient medicine, and it really takes a look at nature and how we fit into nature and how we can kind of look at certain things and say, oh, that's how I should be living. And just using that to treat the entire holistic body.
Because Chinese medicine is it 5 elements that it's based on?
Yes.
Which is, what are they?
Okay, so if you start at the top, there's wood, which that's liver.
Okay.
And then that's the mother of fire, and that's heart. Okay. And you keep going around, so it's always the mother of, and then sun. So wood is the mother of heart, which is fire. Then fire is the mother of earth, which is spleen. Earth is the mother of metal, which is our lungs. And then metal is the mother of water, kidneys. And then it makes a full circle. So water is the mother of wood. So each one is a son to one of them and a mother to one of them. So it's nice. It's a whole circle instead of thinking, I feel like being brought up in the West, we think very linear. Like everything's just a straight line, but a lot of times in Chinese medicine, everything is circular, which is kind of beautiful because you're not just looking at one thing and then the next. It's always moving parts.
Yeah, I love that. And I've studied Ayurvedic more than I've studied Chinese medicine, but it still is very much like living within the seasons and that in cyclical, right? And with the moon and the sun and is that right? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I just love how like you say, you're living with the season. So for example, right now we're in fall, we just want to make sure that we're kind of looking inward. If we look at the trees, they're all letting go. Like autumn is kind of about letting go and going inward. So you see that the trees get really bright and then they lose all their leaves. And then in the wintertime, you don't see much of anything going on. All the trees are bare, but there's tons going on under the surface at the roots. And so with Chinese medicine, same thing. We might see symptoms on the outside, but we really need to focus on the root of somebody's problem and treat that rather than the branches. We can treat both, but I love how it treats the root of the problem.
Well, and I think that's where it's sustainable, right? I've had so many frustrations with doctors that you go to and they give you a medicine for the symptom, but the actual root isn't understood. Questions to understand the root of it aren't understood. So you can't actually make a change in your life. They're just giving you something to mask what that thing is actually doing to your body, which feels very unsustainable, right?
Yeah, like just blocking a receptor or something. So that, like for depression, they just maybe sometimes block a receptor instead of looking at, well, why is there depression and what can we do on the inside? What can we change, even eating habits?
Yeah, no, completely. So traditional Chinese medicine is the umbrella. And then underneath that, there's different, would you call them modalities, like acupuncture being one, acupressure, you mentioned cupping and some other. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, a lot of people just think of acupuncture, which is very helpful. But yeah, there's also the herbal medicine, which is a huge part of it and was a huge part of my training. And then, yeah, gua sha, which is also called scraping.
Okay.
You might have seen crazy videos of people with like lines all over their backs, you know, with a quarter or something. It's usually not that extreme. Of course,
Okay.
that's what TV likes to show. And then, yeah, cupping. There's even nutrition, you know, breath work, qigong, tai chi.
So when a client comes in to see you, when I come in to see you, which I'm excited to do,
Yes.
what can they expect? Like, how do you even start with a client and then determine whether it's herbs or acupuncture or the course of action?
Yeah, I really like to stay on target with whatever the person's health goals are. So we sit down and have usually a session. The first session is at least an hour and a half, just because there's so much information to get out of a person, you know. So you're sitting down, just learning a lot about their health history, learning a lot about what they're going through right now. A lot of times people sometimes get emotional just because they feel like it is a safe place just to kind of let go, you know, and to have someone to talk to. So just taking that time and like figuring out the patient's health goals and looking at the tongue, feeling the person's pulse, looking at their complexion, looking at their fingernails, like just so many details to look at that are clues to what's going on, you know, and then decide, then figure out a diagnosis and a treatment plan and kind of make sure that person's on board with the treatment plan. A lot of times I find that depending on how much somebody knows about Chinese medicine, it's like sometimes they see it as kind of a magical art, you know, and they think like one treatment, I'm going to be good to go. And, you know, some people, there are some cases where some sort of pain is just goes away after one treatment. But usually I try to let people know, like, this is a process. You know, you need to kind of get on board with how much are you willing to invest in this, as far as changing lifestyle, if there's any dietary changes that we talk about that need to be made. And if you're willing to take herbs, a lot of people, like I didn't grow up taking any kind of herbs. And so, yeah, the first time I took Chinese medicine, it's kind of something to get used to depending on what formula you're on. So just talking to someone about all of this, and, you know, some people aren't open to herbs, and that's fine. I just tell them, you know, if you want to get faster results and kind of, you know, most people can maybe afford acupuncture 2 times a week at the most. In between those treatments, you know, the herbs are doing the work and helping the whole process.
Yeah, I love what you said though about it is a process. Like I love Chinese medicine or the ancient medicines in general, because they, first of all, sitting down and having a doctor legitimately evaluate you and ask you questions about your life and like look at your tongue and your nails and your complex, like that just seems magical all by itself, and only in the sense of having someone really want to understand what the human body is telling the outside world. Like, what is it showing? What it can communicate so much, and we're not, as Westerners, ever taught that. And then we're also taught to expect convenience, right? Like, take a pill and you'll lose 40 pounds, like go to the drive-through and blah, blah, blah. So this, I mean, being an ancient practice too, it's like we're healing your body. So of course we're not going to do it overnight, and there's different ways of doing it, but you have to commit to the lifestyle change. And I think that's just not something that we're taught really growing up in this country specifically. Is you could have the magic bullet, but is that actually healing you from the inside for like the long term, you know?
Yeah, is it going to last? The question.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you'd mentioned depression there, and I know depression, anxiety, like a lot of people struggle with it. So I'm wondering, someone that comes in to see you for that, Is it acupuncture? Is it herbs? Is it a combination of that still, depending on the person? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely still a combination depending on the person. I love herbs. That's where I kind of started with nutrition and herbs. So I say, why not? If you have herbs available that are safe, why wouldn't you? You know?
Yeah.
And then just simple, changes in diet. But yeah, it would be the same thing. And what I like about Chinese medicine is you see one thing, you see depression. You could see 5 different people with depression and they would all be treated most of the time differently because there's a different cause in most all of them. There might be little, like the liver is often involved in depression. But sometimes there's, in Chinese medicine, we talk about dampness, which is like a not transforming and transporting fluids properly. Could be all kinds of reasons for depression. So yeah, each person will get treated a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I think that's this, I mean, even with life coaching or anything, there's no one fixed solution for everyone. I don't even think for a handful of people, like understanding people's like lived experiences, their environments, what their day-to-day looks like. All of these different things, I think, shape each of us uniquely, that it's like you really need to tap into understand your own body and your needs and nutrition. I love that, because even in my studying gut health, I mean, it literally was the things that you're putting in your body, the food that you put in your body are changing your gut microbiome, right? Which ultimately affects all of you, your skin, your moods, your brain function. Yeah. It literally the food that you're putting in your body. So then being able to supplement it with herbs and other acupuncture, acupressure, that kind of thing too. It just supports that. But I think a lot of it comes down to what you're putting in your body. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. They've found recently, I don't know, in the last 10 or 15 years, the gut brain axis, and how many neurons are actually in your intestinal tract. So yeah, I can definitely notice a difference. I mean, I'm not perfect by any means with my nutrition, but I can tell pretty quickly if I have something that, too much sugar or alcohol or something. It affects my mood pretty quickly. And that's how I know, okay, this is affecting my brain.
Right, exactly, right. And if you think that that's a long-term way of living for someone, if that's their lifestyle, of course there's inflammation and ongoing mood or anxiety or depression, because that's the inflammation that your gut is experiencing, which, oh, it's crazy. But there is a solution. Yeah, there is. I'm curious more about the herbs, because you said you've really found the power in that. I'm wondering, what was your gateway into the herbs? And then I know when we chatted over coffee that you had mentioned like you mix them up. So you're making your herbal mixtures per the client. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I use KPC herbs, which they do have formulas. They're kind of just well known. They're thousands of years old. So I do buy some formulas, but then I usually modify it. I have a bunch of single herbs also to modify it for each person. And then, yeah, I guess my gateway into herbal medicine was my sister-in-law. I had just had chronic fatigue my whole life. And I mean, even since a child, I kind of like face planted in my food all the time. My dad would make me get up and run laps around the table.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody ever could figure it out. I had sleep studies done. They said I slept great at night. They didn't know why I was tired the next day. And they did sleep latency, which is making you take naps, like 5 naps the next day. And I had rapid eye movement, and I fell asleep in less than 2 minutes in every nap after like a solid night of sleep. Wow. And so when I met my husband, he said, you have to see my sister, but she's in Canada. And at the time she had been studying phytotherapy, which is pretty much using plants as medicine.
I see. Okay.
So there's a lot of crossover. I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure phytotherapy is more on the European side. So she went to London to study it.
Okay.
But there is a lot of crossover because plants are plants,
Right.
And obviously there's different plants in Asia, but Anyways, she started treating me with mostly nutritional therapy. And then she added herbs, and I just never felt better. It was amazing to me that just changing my diet, I had just never thought of it. I didn't grow up being very conscious of what I was eating.
Yeah.
And so when she pretty much took out dairy, which doesn't sound fun, dairy, gluten, and sugar, like none of that for quite a few months. But when I started feeling so much better, it's like, this is worth it.
No, for sure.
You know, I wasn't falling asleep driving or falling asleep. You know, I just couldn't function. I was so tired all the time.
Yeah, I think that's where I won't get on a bandwagon too much, but it drives me insane, like the type of food that is normal in this world. Like the food that is normal is exactly everything that we're told not to eat if we don't want inflammation, because it causes all of these chronic inflammation issues, which cause all an array of horrible things happening to us. But that's the norm. So to eat healthy and in a way that's anti-inflammatory is against, I mean, it's really cooking for yourself, which I love doing, but cooking for yourself, educating yourself, really being very cognizant of what's in the food that you're putting in your body, right? It's just not, it's definitely a struggle.
It goes against convenience, you know, everything that's convenient is so processed. And, you know, if you're on the road or something, I struggle because I was on the road a lot traveling during school. And what do you eat? Everything is very processed and deep fried, and there's just.
Yeah, no, that's me when I'm traveling. I'm like the snack queen, right? I've got my almonds, my apple, right? It's like, this is the stuff that I have to take unless I want to be stuck at a gas station being like, oh, I need food.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I would like to tap more into acupuncture because I think acupuncture is fascinating. I've had it done a few times. I think I'd mentioned for infertility and then when I was pregnant, like supporting my body to prepare for childbirth. But I have never fully understood what it's doing, like putting needles in me to support my body. Will you explain it a little bit more?
Well, it's such a big question. You can look at it from, I guess, the Western side. There's been a lot of research, thankfully, you know, because at one point it was thought of as voodoo.
Oh, right.
But thankfully, the Western side has researched it enough to explain some of it, but still all of it can't be explained. It's just a really fascinating medicine. So on the Western side, there's a few different things. It works a lot with the nervous system because a lot of where the acupuncture points are is where the nerves are splitting off. So it's very close to the nerves. And we know that sensory signals are going back up our spinal cord to our brain, right? You know, and then the motor is coming down. So a lot of times if you're treating acupuncture motor stuff, you'll treat on the scalp, like near the brain. And then the sensory is going back up. And then along with that, you're creating this cascade. So a foreign object is going into your skin. And so it kind of alerts your body like, oh, something's going on, you know, and your body sends inflammatory regulators to that area. And then there's also endorphin release, dopamine. There's just a cascade of things that kind of happen that really trigger the brain, which is, you know, controls the whole body.
Yeah. So it's almost, so there's the specific acupuncture points. Is that what you call them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then that's almost telling, it's almost like, because when you feel the needle, I don't know, it's so slight. I guess I never watched the needles really go in, but it's very slight, right? The feeling. And then it triggers your body to basically pay attention to that area is kind of what you're telling it to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it kind of sends off all these signals. And that's why it's been really good. They've done a lot of research with like long hauler syndrome, because that affects the autonomic nervous system with COVID. It affects the autonomic nervous system, which controls like blood pressure, heart rate, breathing. And so that's why acupuncture has been so helpful with that, because you're tapping into that nervous system.
See, okay, fascinating.
And then on the Chinese medicine side, though, I guess you get into qi, which is kind of the life force energy and all in all creation.
Yeah.
And you're working with channels. So there's 14 channels in the body. And it's interesting. There's a book, The Spark in the Machine, that's really fascinating, even if you don't know a lot about acupuncture, because it talks about the science behind it. It's an acupuncturist who was also, I believe he started out as an MD.
Okay.
And so he kind of knows both sides of it.
I love that.
And his theory is, because he's done a lot of surgeries and stuff, you know, that Western medicine can't find these channels that we talk about, or the meridians.
Right.
His theory is that there's a couple of different theories, that it's in the fascial planes. So where your fascia kind of comes together, that's where, if you had surgery, they would cut at that plane so that they're not having to cut through all of that. You know, it more easily spreads apart. And so his theory is that it's the meridians run through those fascial planes. And then another theory is kind of just that it's in the interstitial fluids, like under your skin. And so that's how it works so well, because all of those anti-inflammatory kind of regulators are there right under the skin.
Gotcha. Interesting. So it's almost, I mean, I love that we all are energy, and I've studied the chakras quite a bit too, and it's keeping the flows flowing. And once there becomes a block or something stagnant, that's where we get an issue, a problem, right? So it sounds, meridians, chakras, I believe they're in the same concept, right? Are they?
You know, I haven't studied chakras much, but yeah, I hear that a lot. I should probably look into that a little bit more, but they sound similar. Yeah. Like, I know we have an acupuncture point here, yin tongue, which is at the third eye.
Yeah, right. Okay. Because Chinese medicine, I don't know that we mentioned this to start with. Do you know how old it is? Like how far it's long, it's old.
It's over
old,
2,000 years. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And that's where I think I love that, Ayurveda, these wisdoms that like huge cultures have been studying and working with, and are very rooted in our own energy, or just very simple, uncomplicated. I mean, it is complicated, but really just tuning into the body rather than looking outward. It's all very like internal focus to the body, to Mother Earth. And I think that's why I resonated. It just seems like that's where the answers come from. Of course, it's not from technology. And
yeah, and that's the hardest thing to get, like, even for me to understand. If you're not very self-aware of your body, then it's hard to kind of get information out of people, because maybe they don't pay attention to how they sweat, like where they sweat and how easily they sweat, or they don't pay attention to, you know, how they feel after they have dairy or something like that. And I'm the same way. And so then it's hard, even when you start treating, if something feels a little bit better, you know, if people aren't very self-aware, like myself even, then it's hard to kind of say, look, like, this is what it's helping. You know, we're treating, for instance, I had a patient, she's very self-aware. She's one of my favorite patients, but she is being treated for high blood pressure. But the interesting thing is, she noticed after treatment that some of her pain went away. You know, she had like this chronic pain of kind of like a rubber band sensation. She explained it as just tightness. And she said it just went away, and we weren't even treating that. And it's nice when you have people, you know, that notice these things, like, oh wow, like something else good happened, or I had a really great night of sleep that night.
I think it is
just being aware,
because and I think the word holistic is thrown around so much, but to think that we can just deal with one part of our body and that it doesn't affect this whole system that is interconnected and isn't one energy flow, to me is, do I see the word ridiculous? Ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. Like, we are one, like, to think that you can just work on one area and that it doesn't like have repercussions or positive effects on another area, I think is ridiculous. So I love, yeah, I think that's, and tuning into your body. I'm the worst at telling people, like, listen to your body. What is it telling you? But I realize that that's something I've learned over the last 10, 15 years is, what is my gut telling me? What is that skin rash telling me? What is my bloodshot eyes telling me? What is my dull hair and my dull complexion telling me? And I find it fascinating, but it's not anything that we're taught, right?
I know. Yeah. We're just not. I don't know why, but yeah, it's something I'm having to teach myself to like pay attention. For a while, and I like to ask patients to keep a food diary. And I try myself to, just because you become really aware,
Yeah.
you write down what you eat and then see how you write down how you feel. And it kind of can pinpoint, oh, maybe like onions don't agree with me, just random things, just
Right.
sometimes your body doesn't process things properly.
Yeah, no, completely.
Figuring out what that is.
Yeah. I think we'll just go there, but I'm thinking the basic one is your poop. Like your poop, we talked about that a little bit, but
Yeah.
the quality of your poop, and I won't say any more than that, but tells you a lot about what your gut health and therefore your overall health, right? Like your poop should look like a poop and not, I'll let you guys figure that one out for yourself. But that's the key, that we all should be pooping and it should be regular and daily, but
yeah,
there's a lot of different ways that we can tap into that and start to pay attention to the cues our body's sending us.
Yeah, one of my professors, he always said, it should look like a small banana.
Perfect.
Yeah, we do go into detail about that, because it's that's how, like, what's coming out and how it's coming out is how your gut is digesting and processing things.
Right, for sure. Yeah. And whether you're getting the nutrition or not getting the nutrition, or whether it's inflamed or not inflamed.
Mm-hmm.
The other key thing that I know comes up a lot with naturopathic practitioners is looking at the tongue. So I'm curious, when you're looking at the tongue, what are you looking for?
Yeah, it just tells so much about the digestion. You look for all the organs. If you look at a kind of a tongue diagram, you can easily Google it, Chinese medicine tongue diagram. There are different organs. So usually the sides are going to be liver and gallbladder. The tip is the heart.
Okay.
And then the center is digestion. And so you're kind of looking, you first look at the tongue body. Yeah, like, does it, when you stick out your tongue, does it go past the width of your mouth? Like, is it swollen or is it super small? Like, is it, you're looking at size, and that tells you kind of the person's chi and how they're metabolizing fluids. Like, if there's a pretty swollen tongue, puffy, then they're not metabolizing fluids properly. There's something not transporting. And then, so you're looking at the tongue body, you're looking at color for sure, because color is going to tell you whether there's heat in the body. If the tongue's really red, if it's super pale, there might be some blood deficiency, or it might be some lack of warmth in the body. If it's kind of a dusky purple color, there might be some blood stagnating. You're looking for all these things. And then finally, the tongue coating also tells about the fluids in the body. Like, if there's a lack of tongue coating, if it kind of looks like a mirror, then there's definitely some fluid deficiency.
Okay.
If there's too much coating, and you might have even seen a COVID tongue, like that was kind of a thing. Even in Western medicine, there are certain tongues that they look for like scarlet fever. It's kind of a strawberry tongue, which is interesting because it goes hand in hand with Chinese medicine. It's usually a very, very red tongue. So there's some inflammation, some heat, but then it'll have a really thick tongue coating, like a white tongue coating, and then these little prickles that make it look like a strawberry.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
So, yeah. And then we even look at the underside for the veins and see if they're really engorged. If they are, then there's some blood stagnation.
Interesting. And it's the same. Is this Chinese medicine that also, like, the hands and the feet have their own Are they pressure points
like
that
microcosms kind of?
yeah, that link
Yeah, and
to
the
other
ears.
organs, right? Oh, and the ears do too? Huh.
Yes, I love ear acupuncture, and I like to send people away with ear seeds. It's literally just a seed, and it's on some like medical tape, that's skin colored, and you put it on points so that it's kind of a pressure.
I see.
So when you poke the seed, when you kind of squeeze, then it's putting pressure on whatever point, that I put the seed on. So yeah, the ear is an upside down fetus, which is kind of fun. Like the head is the lobe. So there's eyes. Actually, where we pierce our ears is right through the eye.
Oh.
And it was thought in ancient time that that's why they did that to make their vision better, because they're putting gold, right through there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all. I have all sorts of piercings. I'll have to see what else I put a hole in.
I know. I said that to one of my patients. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, considering what you're going through, they're like, where your piercing is, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I never knew that was like an actual reason for it. Huh. Oh my gosh, so much information. I'm like, this is so great. I'm curious if there's any stories of your favorite stories from clients or helping clients either, I guess, cure them or help them see a new lifestyle through just the work that you're doing to show them a different way of living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I guess the one that sticks out to me, when I was in school clinic, we had a husband and wife come in, and that's always kind of fun. They didn't necessarily get treated together, but they were both like on this health journey together. And the husband had chronic kidney disease. So I think he was stage 4, where he was having to get dialysis regularly. And he was having a lot of lower back pain, which in Chinese medicine, we link the kidneys with that. The kidneys are right there in the lower back. And so a lot of times if someone has what we would call a kidney deficiency, then they're going to have lots of lower back pain. And then the wife, she was taking care of him all the time. And so she was sometimes having to lift him and just do some physical labor. And so she was also having some back pain, but she was even having almost like sciatica type, where the nerve was sending signals all the way down to the top of the foot. And she was having some like tingling and some stabbing pain.
Right.
It just helping them. So not that we can reverse what's happening with the chronic kidney disease,
Right.
but we can help definitely with the symptoms, with relieving his back pain and kind of keeping him stable so that he doesn't keep progressing, to get worse. And then with her, it was kind of a light bulb moment for me. Like we learn all the dermatomes, which in Western medicine is, like the nerve roots where they come out, and then where, say, your cervical nerve root 8 is going to go down to the pinky. So sometimes when people are feeling numbness all the way down to the pinky, you treat the cervical, because that's where the nerve comes out, and you're getting really close to those nerves. And so that was the first time really light bulb, where my supervisor said, well, try treating her, right at the lumbar 4 and 5, because that's where, the nerve root is going, that she's feeling numbness and tingling down at her foot. And it just was amazing. She came back and she was like, this is magic.
Really?
That pain is completely gone, but it had moved up a bit. Like, so now, or sometimes it's just people are focusing so much on the pain in one part that there might be pain somewhere else, but they're thinking, all the pain's down there. So sometimes when you treat something, then the pain will move, or they'll notice it somewhere else because they weren't noticing it before. So it just kept kind of moving up. And the more we treated her back, like that pain totally went away.
Wow.
And so one day she came in and she was so excited that her and her husband, this was down in Houston, so near the Gulf, Galveston. she said, I have to tell you, my husband and I, we went to Galveston, and she said, for the first time in years, she said, I ran on the beach. She said, I was just so happy and I just ran. And
I love that.
so it's
Amazing.
just stories like that, especially with a husband and wife, that they were both getting help and they both felt good enough to go to the beach.
Yeah. And was it acupuncture that you were doing primarily?
Yes, this couple was not taking herbs.
Okay. Wow. I love that.
And so that's another thing that I have to think about sometimes, because I love herbs so much. Almost, sometimes I kind of question acupuncture, or I did in the beginning, and I thought, oh, herbs is where it's at. Like, herbs can do so much. But it's interesting, some of the cases that I saw in clinic, actually some of the best results were without herbs, or I thought the herbs were doing a majority of the work. And when I took those herbs away, they still got really good results.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
So,
I
mean, it can go both ways, but just it's a whole, you just never know what is doing most of the work.
Yeah. And what your body needs at that moment, or is going to be receptive to.
Yeah.
I'm curious, just for the masses right now, like we're in flu season. Obviously, COVID is still a thing. And just even in winter in general, are there some like best practices or tips to keep your body in balance during like the colder season, the drier season, the flu season? Mm-hmm. This is a total curveball question, so sorry to put you on the spot.
No, there definitely is. I tend to go towards nutrition therapy for sure, just because kind of eat what's in season. So right now we should be eating more root vegetables. We should be cooking our vegetables more. Yeah. Just because if you think about most of the food that should be available at this time are things that you need to cook more. Right. Like squash and potatoes and like roasted vegetables. So I would say definitely during the winter season to kind of gravitate towards what's in season. Okay. Not a whole lot of cold salads or cold like raw vegetables. Really need to steam the vegetables. When we get more to spring, then it's like a very light steaming of the vegetables, or raw vegetables is kind of in line with the season that we're in. And then also just we're such a busy society. We have to remember that we're not having much daylight, and that's kind of a trigger for our bodies. Like, we should be resting more. Yeah. Not necessarily going to bed when the sun goes down, because that's like 4:00 now. Right. But if you can, let yourself sleep in until the sun comes up. Right. Just get more rest. Just spend more time with like small groups of people, just relaxing, not doing a whole lot. In the wintertime, if you look at the trees, again, like we were talking about earlier, everything's very quiet. There might be things going on under the soil and the roots, but for the most part, everything's quiet and contained.
Yeah, I love that. I needed to hear that too. I'm like fighting myself at the moment. I'm like, I have stuff I need to get done. Why am I tired? I need to be. I'm like, it's winter, Gemma. You're supposed to be more restful and not racing a million miles an hour. So thank you. Is there anything specific that even like supports the lungs? I know a lot of like, it feels like a lot of the illnesses this time of year affect the lungs, right?
It's hard because I have a hard time saying, oh, this for sure, because everything does a little bit different depending on the person. But I did post Instagram about pumpkin, which is really good for the lungs in this time of year. There's lots of foods, but it does kind of depend on the person. Like pears and apples are usually pretty good for the lungs. But just everything in moderation.
Yes, like with anything, right?
So I have a hard time with, because sometimes you hear a news story that like, oh, ginger is so good for immunity, or garlic, but it's not good for everyone. And not good if you don't do it in moderation.
I completely hear you on that. And I think even incorporating it into your food, not like there's so many supplements or powders or whatever. It's like, but pulling out a piece of ginger, right? Like a certain extract out of it, or pulling a certain liquid. I'm like,
Yeah,
it feels like it's not quite the whole piece that you were supposed to be consuming. Like just chop it into your curry or your soup, and then you
yes,
know that you're
exactly.
getting all of the things that ginger is made up of, not like you're pulling out the best part. That doesn't feel holistic or sustainable either.
Yeah, because sometimes there is, you might pull out one constituent, like you say, but sometimes the other ones help you digest it,
Yeah.
It's like the whole thing together. The other thing I guess that I've grown really fond of lately is mushrooms. Because they have a lot of vitamin D, which we're lacking in right now with the lack of sunlight. So a
Right.
really good source of vitamin D. And then there are they're pretty good for immunity. There's cordyceps, which is really known for helping with immunity.
Right. Love it.
Um,
There's so, I mean,
all
mushrooms are
kinds of
almost
different
trendy
mushrooms.
right now, right? Like I have a coffee mix that has mushrooms in them,
Yeah.
like with like ashwagandha for,
Mm-hmm.
the adaptogen, and lion's mane, and
Yes.
but yeah, follow that trend, because I think your mushrooms seem like a total superfood.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're kind of expensive, but
It's worth it. It'll
they're
save you a
delicious.
doctor's bill, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Fun. I'm just looking at my other questions. I feel like I could really talk to you all day about Chinese medicine, because I know the depth. Listened to a couple audiobooks on Chinese medicine because I think it's just fascinating, and living cyclically by the seasons, tuning into your body. It just resonates so much with me in a holistic way of living. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before you move into how people can find you?
Um, I mean, one thing I'd like to talk about, I guess, is from a Christian viewpoint and believing in God. I know that some people, I don't run into a whole lot of people, but some people have a hard time with acupuncture and energy, thinking that energy is something weird. But I mean, if you really think about it, your heart, if they're going to resuscitate you, if your heart stops, they're going to use electricity to restart your heart, because your heart, the SA node in your heart, runs off of energy, electricity.
Right.
And so, when I first started, I thought, oh, this is kind of woo woo, like energy, because it just sounds kind of, we don't talk about energy.
Right.
But obviously we have mitochondria that produce ATP, energy of our body. So I guess what I would want to say is it's just not so far out there. And even though acupuncture was founded in Taoism, which is kind of, they call it the way. I haven't researched a lot about Taoism, but from the little bit I have learned, it's kind of, I don't know that it's the worship of creation, the creation rather than the creator, but it's more focused on creation.
Right.
But what I gather from it is God, in my mind, God created everything. So if we're looking at creation and we're wanting to be in sync with creation, then we're in sync with God. God created all of this. Anything that might have been created for evil, I believe God can make anything good. So
yeah, for
that's
sure.
my spiel on that.
No, and I think you're right, because I think there's various people that listen to this podcast that have different beliefs. And I think it's the belief in, even, I don't know, like listening to this beautiful body that you're living in, and you're being in this world, and for whatever belief system that you believe sounds really great, but it's understanding it and seeing the beauty in it and listening to it. And so I don't know where I'm fully going with this, but just seeing that beauty from however you believe it was created, or
Right.
I and following that to live your best life, to be the best person that you can be on this planet for whatever your belief is.
Your purpose, yeah. Belief and purpose, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think. Like if you can align with the best, not even the best version of yourself, but align with your true self and your purpose, then you get to radiate that for yourself, for your longevity, but for the people around you, for your community, to be just a bright human being on this planet, you know?
Yeah. I think you said it well.
Thanks. Stumbling, but well, I love this. I hope that, I think more and more, I mean, I drive around Coeur d'Alene and there's acupuncture. There's a couple of different acupuncture places, right? I see signs and I'm like, oh, there's another one. So I love having this conversation. I wouldn't say that it's mainstream yet, but people are starting to really see the value and feel the value in a different way of healing our bodies. And so how do people find you, Heidi?
The best way is to email me. So you can find my email at my website, which is Ancient Spring, no S at the end, just Ancient Spring Acu, which is just acu.com. There's a little message box right there on the website, I think under contact, and that'll just shoot me an automatic email. Nice. So that would be easy. And then my phone number is there. Okay, I respond to any of that.
Yeah, awesome.
And you can even book online.
Oh, you can even book online. Perfect. Now online is the way, right? Yeah. I'll put all of that in the show notes so people can see it and reference it as well. Okay. So I like to end each conversation with just the question about, are there 2 or 3 people locally who have inspired you? I know you've touched base with different acupuncturists and people in your time here in Coeur d'Alene. So
yeah, definitely. I've met some wonderful people. So right off the top of my head, Dwight, Dansereau, and I hope I'm not butchering his name, and Christine Lovejoy. Mm-hmm. She owns a yoga practice, Morning Light Yoga. And Dwight, they're both massage therapists, but I just love how they're very involved in the community and they just welcome everybody with open arms. So they have I met them, I just called Christine one day asking about her yoga class. So I thought, oh, like yoga, qigong, all of this stuff just supports the body so well. And when I got to talking to her, she asked, where are you coming from and what do you do? And when I told her acupuncture, she said, I think you should meet my husband. He teaches a qigong class and we meet every Wednesday at Go Fibney Park. It's like, how great is that? You're meeting in the summertime, meet outdoors. It's so beautiful, and just practice qigong for an hour. And it's by donation. You just put in what money you can put in and meet with like-minded people. So they've been a huge inspiration and helped me meet like-minded people. And then the other person is the acupuncturist I share space with. I feel really blessed to have met her, Lindsey Sichelstiel. Okay. So she owns Cypress Acupuncture, and I just love the space that she created there. And again, she's been welcomed me with open arms and lets me share her space, sometimes sends me overflow. She's just a great person.
I love that. Fabulous. And your space you're on Sherman Avenue. You're above the sushi restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. What's that called right there?
Kaiju Sushi.
Kaiju. Yes, perfect. So what an amazing space to be. So people can easily come downtown, get to be downtown, come visit you. Love it.
Yeah, it's in the old City Hall building. So it's got all the nice big picture windows and
sounds lovely. Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Heidi. This was so fun to learn more about all of this alternative awesomeness.
Yeah, I look forward to visiting more.
Thanks.